Welcome to episode 7 of the creative process for Danza de las Brujas Fantasmas. This week, we're going to turn this into this. But first, Angry Orchard. As you might have noticed, with an acoustic guitar in a song like this, your changes, your processing, it should be fairly subtle. Basically, when you record an acoustic direct, the way I did with this, it does not sound like an acoustic sounds when you're in the room with it. So I want to make it sound like you're in the room with it. So these changes are going to be subtle, but very important. Every little tiny tweak done to the acoustic is incredibly important. I decided to accomplish the processing of the acoustic by a method called ReAmping. When you ReAmp, what you do is you take a signal that was originally recorded direct, and then you feed it out of the board and back into a guitar rig. In this case, I'll be using my Boss Katana MK250, which has all the effects I need built in. I decided to go that route for two reasons. First of all, I can use the computer to program the amplifier, which lets me screen record that and show it to you. Secondly, I can export those files, those settings for the amplifier, and offer them to the Patreons. So those are up on our Patreon. If you visit our Patreon at this link right here and sign up at the $5 a month level, you can download the settings for this acoustic guitar that you just heard. To accomplish this with my setup, there's a lot of steps involved. There's links in the description below that take you directly to each section of the tutorial if you just want to skip to a specific section. And the sections are exporting the files from Reaper, importing the files into the Live Track 20, recording the ReAmp signal, including getting my microphone levels, moving those ReAmped files back over to the PC, importing them back into Reaper, and then determining the final mix and if we have to do any in-the-box processing of those mic signals. Also, it would have been nearly impossible to record my voiceovers during the ReAmping process. So what I've done is I've made a video of the ReAmping process, and I'm going to watch the video and do the voiceovers now. So you might notice that I'm just sitting here talking while stuff's happening on your screen. That's because I'm just watching the same video that you're seeing on the majority of the screen. Let's get started. Alright, so what I've done is I've already gotten the tone that I want, and I'm just playing it back for you right now and making the same changes and turning things on and off so that you can hear the difference. First thing I'm going to do is set the equalizer and the presence on the amp. Presence, if you're not aware, it does something to the frequency response that lets you cut the mix. Now, if I set a magical slider fairy on this, it'll even out the tone since I'm playing fingerstyle. So, no magical slider fairy. Magical slider fairy. I'm going to throw a little reverb on it. The edges are really sharp when I stop playing. This should soften them up a little bit. Hear that? That little bit of echo in the background? It just softens up those edges. It makes things blend better. No reverb. Reverb. No reverb. Reverb. I want to add a slapback delay. What this is going to do is it's going to kind of double the transients. It's just going to increase the signal a little. I'm also using a tape echo, which is a little dirty. So this is no delay. Delay. Throw a little equalization on it. This equalization happens on the amp out, which means it's almost like putting an equalizer between the amp and the speaker. Equalizer on. Equalizer off. The change is very subtle. The big thing I did is a low cut at 125, which keeps it out of the way of the kick drum in the mix. It sounds a little flat, so I'm going to put a very subtle tremolo on it. If you don't know what tremolo is, it's almost like if you took Johnny 5 and told him to hold your volume knob and wiggle it rhythmically. So Johnny 5's there. I take Johnny 5 away. Johnny 5's back. Hear how that just fills it out a little bit? No Johnny 5. Johnny 5. And you can see my mic setup over there in the right-hand bottom too. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm just saving this to the amplifier so that I can unplug the amplifier from the computer and stick it in another room in order to reamp it. And that is the final acoustic tone that I'm actually going to feed back into those microphones. Now I'm over in Reaper, and what I want to do is export all of my multi-tracks. First, I'm going to set all my sliders to Unity. The drums I'm exporting as a stereo file. The reason for that and the importance of that will become obvious in a bit. Notice that I set it to 48 kHz in Reaper because it's also 48 kHz on my Live Track 20. Those have to match, or the Live Track 20 won't be able to import the file. Now I'm actually going to export all the multi-tracks. Technically I only have to export the acoustic in order to reamp it, but I want to hear those mics come back at me in a mix with the entire song while I'm recording the reamp. That way if I want to change something to the signal, I can make that decision right then. And in order to do that, I have to export everything. Notice that I'm exporting everything except the drums in mono. And as I said, I'll go over the reason for that in a little bit. So here we go. All right, the electrics are both exported. Now it's time to export the acoustic. So I go ahead and mute both of the electrics and export. It's very important to get this one right. That's why I took so much time thinking about it. If the other ones are wrong, I can deal with that. But if that one was wrong, I would have to start all over because that's the one I'm reamping. Now I'm going to export that bass. And okay, everything's exported. I'm not going to save my project because I don't want to save it with those changes to the sliders. Now I'm taking those files and throwing them out onto a USB drive. Grab them all. Those ones that say playground, I always do a version of the tutorial before I actually record the tutorial. It makes them go a lot smoother, and the files that I make in that and the mix that I use for that are called playground. So here's the live track 20. I'm going to turn it off. I know it's a horrible angle. I already ordered what I need to fix that. I'm going to change it from audio interface mode over to USB host mode. What that's going to let me do is it's going to let me plug my thumb drive in. And then of course I have to turn it back on. And then I can read those files off the thumb drive. So right here, when I import the drums, which are the first ones I'm going to import, I know that screen's really hard to read. Since it's a stereo file, I only get access to this 2 stereo sets of tracks. So I go ahead and put that on one of the stereo tracks. And then I import the bass. Put that on one of the mono tracks. I'm going to put it on track 2. Why not? Now I import the acoustic. And what I'm pointing out there is that track 2 has disappeared because it has a file on it. So I stick the acoustic on track 3, the left electric on track 4, the right electric on track 5. Now I just quick pop over and look at the files that are on there to make sure I got them all. And I did. And what I'm pointing out there is always double check your project and make sure you're in the right project. Now I'm arming the tracks. The ones that are green are going to play back. The ones that are red are going to record. I'm on the master setting. And right now what I'm doing is I'm setting my levels. I know you can't hear this happening. If you look at those green bars going up and down, that's telling you how loud things are in relation to one another. I hit the select button on track 2 and made sure all of my channel strips was correct over there. Same thing for track 3. It should all be flat. Now for track 4, I do have it panned to the left. And for track 5, I have it panned to the right. That's because those are my electric left and my electric right. My drums are flat because it's a stereo file with the panning embedded. That's my MXL 910 channel panned to the left and my SM58 channel panned to the right. That way I can hear what's going on. What I'm showing you there is that my ReAmp signal is coming out of monitor mix F, so I turn on monitor mix F and I turn that acoustic up. If you noticed, I left the acoustic at negative infinity or turned off on the master. I don't want it to come out of the master. I only want it to come out of monitor mix F, which is what's feeding the guitar amp. So I go back to the master now, and I can start turning my gains up on my microphones in order to get that ReAmp signal back into the guitar, back into the board. So I'm taking it up until I just barely get a little orange on it. I want it to be as loud as possible on the ReAmp. And then I want both mics to be about the same volume. So now I'm bringing up the SM58. Notice down there that those tracks aren't equal, but I have that gain at 3/4. I don't like to take my gain above 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn both my gains down a little bit. And I went over and turned the amplifier up. Or I'm about to anyway. Now notice that the XML, or the MXL 910, is significantly louder than the SM58. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing that SM58 gain up to kind of match them. You'll never get them exact, but you want them close. You can always make decisions later about what should be louder and what should be softer, but when you're actually reamping, you want them close. Okay, just turned overdubbing on, and now I'm recording that reamp signal. Yeah, this is 30 seconds of this. I did speed it up, but I wanted to leave the whole thing in there. It gives me an opportunity to talk to you a little bit. Hey, if you're enjoying the video, click like, subscribe, ring the bell so I can let you know about future uploads, please. That overdubbing, it's important to turn that on or the live track's gonna actually make a new project. Now I turn the live track off, switch the mode again. This time I'm going over to USB host. Turn the live track back on. And I got my USB thing, and so I'm on the computer now. And create the folder. Copy those files, rename them. Back over to the live track, turn it off. Make sure that I'm in audio interface mode. Turn it back on. And now the reamping is done and I'm ready to start working with those files. I created the bus tracks starting with a B and put all of them at the top. And then my live tracks, my recordings, are numbered 1 through 11. Also, if you notice, some of these are indented. That's because the overhead bus and the drum reverb feed the drum bus, so they're subservient to it, and the same with the electric bus and the guitar bus. Before I can import those files, first I'm going to create a track that is going to be B2B acoustic bus. Because when I'm done here, I'm actually going to have 3 acoustic guitar signals. Then I'm going to go down here to where my acoustic is, and I'm going to insert 2 more tracks there. Make sure the first of those 2 tracks is highlighted, and then I can insert my media files. First thing I want to do is trim them down to the same length. I intentionally made them longer than the other files so that I could do this. Cut them, delete them. The S key creates that cut, by the way. Go back to the beginning here. And now I want to check the phase between these reamped files and the DI file. The reason for that is I was actually going through 80 feet of cable, 40 to the amp and then 40 back to the board. So that probably set them a little bit out of phase. It probably created a little bit of what's called latency. So I'm going to zoom way in here. And you can see that it certainly did. There's the first peak on my DI signal, and that happens at the time of 2 seconds, 0.378. And then if I go to the first peak on my reamped file, which is right here, so I want to be there, and notice that they're not quite in phase with each other either. So then what I do is I subtract the MXL from the DI, so that's a difference of 0.006 milliseconds, and then the SM57 is 2 milliseconds later. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and go into that acoustic DI, and I want to route that not to the guitar bus, but to the acoustic bus. And I want to do the same thing with the two ReAmp signals. I don't want to send that to the master. I want to send it to the acoustic bus. Now, notice this checkbox for playback time offset. If I check that, leave it on milliseconds, and set it to negative 0.006, I've just brought that in phase with the DI signal. And then I'm going to go over here to the SM57 and do all the same things. But this is going to be 0.008 milliseconds. Then I go back to my acoustic bus, check my receives, and it's getting the raw acoustic, the XML, and the SM57. See how right here, it's already being sent to the parent track instead of to the master, so I don't need to do anything with that. Now I need to check my routing here, and I already have a manual one in here, so I'm not going to bother to undo that because it'll accomplish the same thing. So the acoustic bus is at unity and it's feeding into the guitar bus. Now I might have some hiss in here because it's a ReAmp signal, so let me zoom back out on this. Let me find a spot where there's no acoustic. I'm going to loop on that, rename these tracks. 09A. I'm not going to make them children because I don't want the acoustics volume to affect the volume on these. And 09B, I'm going to solo one of the mics and just hit play. I'm getting a little hiss there, so I'm going to fix that with gate. See that hiss? And it's all gone. Copy that. Solo this. Paste the gate. And this one's a little louder. Wow, that sounded like a dance hit out of the 80s. Rewind that, get rid of that time selection. I'm going to leave my looping on so that everything loops. I'm going to select the first verse, and I'm going to extend that out through the first chorus. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all three acoustic signals completely off, and I'm going to play it. And then I'm going to start bringing those mics in. Here's the MXL. Let me pan that some. Not hard pan. I'm going to go ahead and pan this one some. Just creating a stereo image here. Want it to sound almost like he's got two amps set up at opposite sides of the stage. Okay. Here is just the SM57. Here's just the MXL. You hear that difference? It's subtle, but it's there. Now, I'm going to take that raw DI signal, and I'm going to bring a little bit of that in, almost like you're sitting close to the stage and can hear the acoustic guitar without the amps. Here, listen. Let me solo the acoustic bus. That's no DI, that's DI, it's too subtle. No DI, DI. No DI? DI. The difference is subtle, but it's there. Now, I'm gonna add a little compression to that acoustic bus just to glue those three signals together. I'm gonna throw an EQ on there. For now, I'm gonna leave it flat, but I wanna be able to see my frequency response here. Hear how I'm losing that kick drum again? This time I'm gonna take a different technique. I'm gonna set this frequency up to about 150 Hertz. I'm gonna leave it as a low shelf, but I'm gonna set it at -5 dB. See, that just brings that right back out. Now for my compression, I want to come down to just barely touching that. Set this to a 2-to-1 ratio. See, I'm just getting a little touch of compression. I'm just gluing that signal together. All right, time for the speakers. Big speakers. All right, that sounds good. Let's listen to the whole track start to finish. All right, let's go back and just listen to that outro because I got some peaking going on from the ReAmp signals. Still getting a little bit there. That's fixed, but now we want to go back and double check our mix because we might have to increase the overall volume of the acoustic. So let me grab verse 2, increase that region to include chorus 2. Good enough for the rough mix. We'll do a final mix after we get all the tones. And that is how you reamp an acoustic guitar. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell. Head on over to our Patreon. We got lots of bonus videos up there, and we've got those files. If you also have a Boss Katana, you can make it sound like that just by importing those files. Super simple. Next week, we're gonna get the electric tones. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and God bless. Have a great week, everybody.